Welcome to Bizarro World. That's what I feel like it's like right now. Like we've woken up in this weird place where everything's just kind of effed up. And nothing makes sense anymore. Like we're trying to figure out how to navigate through this stuff, and we're seeing things that just don't make sense. And it's driving me crazy, and I know it's driving you guys crazy. And so one of the things I want to talk about is what's happening and why innovation is so important for our industry right now, and for you as a small business owner, and for me as a small business owner and a speaker, author, mentor. My plan was to do lots of conferences and public speaking this year. Oops, that didn't work out. And so we've been innovating, and I'm going to walk you through some of the innovation programs that we've engaged in for our own practice and how some of that stuff might relate to you. Now, this chart is from McKinsey and Company. And one of the things they're talking about is the impact of COVID on various industries. And I've highlighted in red and with the little c, that's basically art, entertainment, and recreation. And the stuff on the top right is kind of fucked. And that's where we are right now, right? So massive effect, degree of effect by COVID is really high, and the financial risk as an indicator of resilience is high. And so those guys on the top right, which is all of us, are in really, really dangerous territory right now. Now, the other thing I want to show you, look at the little red arrow there. That's actually where art, entertainment, and recreation fall as far as coming back so far. And this is about spending. So consumers are spending in different areas, but they're definitely not spending in this area, in our area right now. It's by far the slowest to rebound. And this is scary, but I want to tell you the truth, right? I've been told I'm kind of like, this is kind of a no bullshit zone. McKinsey is predicting that arts, entertainment, and recreation might not come back to pre-COVID levels until 2024, 2025. And I know a lot of people are holding on for it to reopen and for us to get back to where we were in 2019. But what happens if it doesn't happen for 4 or 5 more years? You can't just hold on. You got to start changing and innovating and looking for opportunities to do things differently. Now, John F. Kennedy said once in a speech, a famous speech, he said the Chinese symbol for crisis is danger and opportunity. And actually, he was wrong. But that's okay. We're going to go with the story anyway. Because in this crisis, while there's a lot of danger, there's always opportunity. But one of the things that shocked me as I saw this stat, again, courtesy of McKinsey, is that people are not actually innovating at all. In fact, executives have gone from where innovation was the number 1 or 2 priority to them pre-COVID to where it's not even on the map now. There's like a 58% reduction in prioritization of innovation. What executives are doing is they're working on efficiency and protecting the core. And that's because they're waiting for things to get back to normal. And I want to show you an example of a company that actually did innovate. Now, this company did pop-up greeting cards, and you've probably seen them. They laser cut out of paper, cardboard, and you'd open a card and this thing would pop up. And what they did was but their go-to-market strategy was through retail shops, and retail was shut down, right? So they're like, what can we do? And they looked at the landscape and they looked at their core competency, and they realized that florists' distribution centers were shut down. And so what they did is they pivoted to pop-up flowers, and they opened up a web store, and they started delivering directly to the home these pop-up flower bouquets, and their business went through the roof. So it's just one example. We're going to show you some more throughout this presentation of ways businesses have innovated and pivoted to match up their core competencies along with a market opportunity. Now, I'm a startup guy. I've done 7 startups myself as part of a founding team or on my own, not including all the ones that I've mentored over the years, right? And there's this notion of you go from startup where you're searching for opportunities, you're looking for product market fit, you're looking for business models that work. And then when you land on something, people move to what they call a scale up, which is you're trying to scale up your business. You're trying to figure out more about execution, more about efficiency, more about replicable business systems, more about squeezing more profit out of every dollar. And that's fine in normal times, but right now, everybody needs to shift back to startup mode. Randy White, who I've interviewed on the Being Virtual show, talked about every business now, especially in the entertainment industry, is a startup today. And so I want you to think about, what are you spending your time on? Are you spending your time on operating plans and marketing plans and financial forecasts and anything circa 2019? Those are not the things you need to be spending your time on. You need to be spending your time over investing in new business models, new markets, new go-to-market strategies, new products and services, because it's not coming back the way we thought it was, at least not in a time horizon that's going to be meaningful to us today. Now, how do you innovate? That's a really good question. And one of the experiences I had with LaserStorm was, oftentimes entrepreneurs, I'll speak from my own experience, you have an idea or you see an idea and you want to improve on it, in my case, and you are committed to that and you move from startup to scale up and you're about operating that idea, and all of a sudden, in LaserStorm's sense, we ran out of locations. We were in like 230 sites in 30 countries, and I kept waiting for the inspiration to strike on the next thing. And I looked at potential acquisitions because we were a public company and I had an acquisition currency, and I'm like, what could I buy? Because lightning's not striking again for me. And so I didn't know how to innovate. But there's actually processes, there are tools that you can use to become innovative. And so recently what we did, luckily my partner Kylie Savage has a deep background in innovation. And we've kind of uncovered some innovation methods, and we've done an innovation exploration project. Now, I've done this with a couple of ex-clients of mine as a casual project. Just to see what kind of opportunities we'd be able to unfold, and B, to really learn more about this remote collaboration, remote event business. And so one of the things you could do is there's lots of these concept generation tools, and I'm going to talk about just a few of them now. So one of them are called collision sessions, right? And so you come to a meeting with a small team, and you have to have a diverse team, by the way. Anytime you're doing innovation, you need diversity. You can't do this by yourself in a room. You can't have a bunch of people with the same background and the same way of thinking, right? So pull in different people from different age groups, different ethnic backgrounds, different experience levels, different roles within the organization. And look at opportunity from three lenses. One is, what are the unmet customer needs out there? Now, this could be your existing customers, it could be somebody else's customers, but what's not being met from a customer need standpoint? What are the big technology trends? So look at it from customer needs, technology trends, and business models. And I think that when you find those three different lenses colliding, you'll find opportunities potentially come out of those discussions. Now, another one that I like is sacred cows. I hate sacred cows, right? It's just this assumption that you can't do anything. And so what you do is you describe your commonly held beliefs that stifle innovation. So here's some examples. And here's one that we used in our project. People don't have headsets at home. And so therefore, you can't scale a business that relies on virtual reality. Alvin Wayne Graylin just at the HTC conference last month said the problem with VR is that it requires VR. So here's a company, HTC, that's really doubled down. Actually, they've gone all in on VR. And he's saying VR is actually the problem, is not enough people have it. So they're pivoting to more mobile and 2D solutions. That's not how you innovate. Another one is VR isn't for kids. Or maybe people will only pay 50 cents per minute if you're in the VR arcade business, right? And then what you do is take those sacred cows, write them down, and say, what if the opposite were true? What if people did have headsets? What if VR is for kids? What if people would pay more than 50 cents a minute? And what comes out of that if you start flipping these sacred cows or these limiting beliefs on their head? What ideas might germinate from your team? The last one I'm going to talk about, I call the squeeze, which is tightening constraints around an idea's business model or operating model, right? So, for example, what if you could only serve 10-year-olds? What would you do? What if you could only be open one day a week? How would that affect your business? Scientifically, it's proven that constraints drive more innovation because it gets you in problem-solving mode, right? And having a successful business is all about solving people's problems, especially in the technology space. And so what kind of constraints can you put on your brainstorming that will get you in creativity mode and might lead to a good idea? And by the way, there are no bad ideas. So recently we've been doing some name storming around an event that we're thinking about running in the event business, right? So we're talking about running a virtual event to show how to run virtual events. And I came up with this really stupid name called Meatball, because you meet and it's like an event, it's a ball. And that was terrible, right? And then that led me to Meat Market, which was even worse. And Meat Market, then I said, well, what about Meat Mart? I kind of like that. It's kind of Meat Mart, it's kind of sing-song. And then Kylie said, well, what about Meat Smart? And I like that because the reason people go to events is to meet people, to educate, which is smart, and to buy stuff, which is mart. So all three words are in there. Now, I don't know if we're going to use it. I don't even know if we're going to do the event. But all of that came out of the stupid idea called Meatball. And had I not written it down, we wouldn't have gotten to that. So there are no bad ideas. They can trigger great ideas. Now, another thing you want to do is you want to create some boundaries when you're having these discussions and these brainstorms. So in our event brainstorm, one of the things we said is we want to go VR first, right? There's too many companies with too much money like Microsoft and Zoom and Apple going into PC-based, tablet-based, mobile-based solutions. If we're going to do something, we want to do something VR first. We want to find a market or a need that's been accelerated by COVID, right? We want to find something that's not regulated. I don't want to sell into the medical industry. I don't have to deal with the FDA. It takes too long for a startup. You got to have a lot of money to survive that shit. I also don't want to sell to the government. I don't want to be in the education business and have long sales cycles and government regulations. And we definitely want it to be in the B2B space, right? And so these were some boundaries that we created around our brainstorming, because if you don't have boundaries, you get too carried away and then everything's possible and now all of a sudden you don't even know where to go. So that's really important. And then the next thing we did was created some evaluation matrices, right? And so in our case, we're looking at blue oceans. And if you haven't read the Blue Ocean Handbook or Blue Ocean Strategy book, it's really good and it's especially relevant right now. And a blue ocean is a big market that doesn't have a lot of competition versus a red ocean that has a ton of competition where every sale's a knife fight and the margins get squeezed. And so we're looking for blue oceans in big markets. That would be awesome. And the other thing we're thinking about is what are clear problems that need to be solved that are also simple enough to be a short sales cycle. And we thought if we could find a blue ocean in a sizable market with a clear problem and a short sales cycle, we might be on to an opportunity that we're going to pursue further. Now, the other thing you want to pay attention to is your core competencies, right? So when I think about the company that went from pop-up books to pop-up flowers, one of their core competencies was 3D design and laser cutting cardboard and printing. So they leveraged those competencies into an entirely new business with a new distribution model. In our case, one of the things we looked at, our core competencies for this team was inexpensive software development, inexpensive game development that was offshore, really good 3D level design, and talent in Unreal Engine, which now is being used for basically everything from music videos to movies to building the metaverse, right? And so those were the core competencies that we really wanted to focus on. Everybody's got their own. It's really important to understand what they are and be aware of them. Now, the other thing we want to do is make some assumptions. And the assumptions that we made in this case were other companies see the lack of VR hardware adoption as a barrier to entry. And I think HTC is a great example of that. We also realized, making the assumption, that VR and AR hardware prices are falling rapidly. And so those two things are going to collide. More people are getting VR, more people are going to get VR. And we also made the assumption that we could do a bundled solution. So if we're going to run an event, did some work with Pico and found that we could take a Pico headset and deliver it to somebody with the software already installed. And I think Steve Grubbs was doing this with Victory XR in his education program. And so people could literally get a headset, open a box, put it on, and be in the event. And the headsets are getting so cheap. Plane travel, if I'm going to fly to an event, it's going to cost me $1,000 minimum. I could give them an Oculus Quest for $500. And some of the headsets are even cheaper than that. And so I think this notion, so those were our assumptions. Make some assumptions about where the market's going so you can get ahead of other people that are basically saying, no, we're not going to go there because of this stuff that might be wrong. And then I think the thing you want to look at is what success look like for you. For me, it was really simple. I wanted to develop expertise in remote collaboration in the event space, and I'm doing that. I wanted to write a white paper on something. I felt like there was an opportunity in this new world where when location-based VR is really struggling and people are moving into VR and virtual technology and all of these other markets that are exploding, what can I do to learn and inform and educate people in a way that they might not be thinking about it? We were also looking at possibly finding some acquisitions that could be timely and cost-effective. There's a lot of companies that are bootstrap startups that have really good products that are trying to find money. And the group that I was working at has access to some capital. And then lastly, identify potential business opportunities. If we found that blue ocean in a sizable market with a real clear value proposition and a short sales cycle, maybe we spin up a team and we build a solution ourselves. And so that's what success looked like to us. You want to make sure you understand what success looks like for you and for your team and for your family. Now, what that leads me to is what I call the triple diamonds of innovation. And so there's 3 basic diamonds. I'm going to step you through these really quickly. The first diamond is to identify markets. The second one is to identify problems. And the third one is to identify solutions. And consider those each phases or stages. And with each stage, there's a divergent phase and a convergent phase. And I'm going to talk about what those are. So divergent versus convergent thinking. It's different ways of thinking. It's left brain, right brain, maybe. It's creative versus analytical. And you have to be able to do both. So divergent thinking is basically going out in the world. It's the first part of the diamond where you're going from the narrow part and you're going out wide, right? And so it's spontaneous. It's free-flowing, it's non-linear, there are no bad ideas, right? It's generative, it's lots of possibilities, everything is possible. You use your imagination, it's really fun. This is where you decide what are the questions that we want to ask. It's not going for the answers, it's going to be really hard. You have to develop discipline about not trying to answer the questions in the divergent phase. Then when you get to the convergent thinking, this is where it starts to come together to a point before you'll diverge again. This is logical, critical, and linear thinking. This is where you come up with what's the answer. So you've defined the questions in the divergent phases. What's the answers in the convergent phases? And so what we've done, the first phase is market definition. In the divergent phase is you investigate the competitive landscape. What are people doing? In what markets? It's really just a big exploration. Who's doing what really well, right? That's what you're looking for. What problems are they solving and for whom? And I like to follow the money. Who's investing in this space? Where's the money flowing, right? And we were able to, in fact, this platform that we're running on today, Hopin, just raised $40 million last month from venture capital around the world. And then when you get to the convergent stage, this is where we start doing some market segmentation, right? So what markets look crowded? What do we call the markets? Where might the blue oceans be? What are the high value use cases? And what I mean by that is, where do you see real value that you might be able to identify and unlock easily? Then when we get, the next phase is problem definition. So we've basically looked at the market. Now let's look at problems. The divergent phase is about identifying the big problems. Because remember, you want to solve a problem if you want to have a business that's successful. What are the biggest pain points within those markets? And get granular. I'll give you an example. we were looking at the event business, right? Trade shows and events. And one of the things we talked about is salespeople go to trade shows to sell. Like that's why you're there. You're there to get an ROI. And the way you get an ROI is you sell shit. And there were no tools that I was finding that enabled people to sell effectively in a virtual event. We actually think Hopin does a pretty good job of that, and we'll check that out later today. And get granular. So find the little things that if you nail it, people are going to love it. And then the convergent phase of the problem stage is select the problem to solve. All right, so we've looked at all the problems out there in this market. Which ones do we actually want to solve? And this is where you really have to be aligned with your core competencies, right? If you don't know how to sell anything, coming up with a solution that helps people sell things might not be your core competency. Also look for the highest leverage opportunities, places where you could do a little bit of work or create a simple solution that has a high value to your customers. And the way to do that is look at feasibility. Can you do it? Speed to market. How quickly can you do it? The magnitude of the pain point. How much pain is this causing for the market? And the market size. Is it a big enough market to make a difference? Now, the last phase I want to talk about is where you actually define the solution. Now, this is another divergent stage where you explore all the possible solutions to the problem that you've defined in the market that you've defined, right? So you might want to look at potential partners. If you can't build the whole thing yourself, who could you partner with? Find channel opportunities. Who are channel partners that might be able to invest or partner with, or maybe they've got pieces of technology that you can assemble. It's good to map out the ecosystem at this stage if you haven't done it by now. We just did, Chris actually just helped us with an ecosystem map for the event business, and it just blew my mind looking at all the constituents and all the roles, and a lot of knowledge comes out of that. And then identify investors that are active in the space and start having conversations. And then lastly, you start defining the solution by converging around an MVP or a minimum viable product. What's the product feature set? Define the value proposition as clearly as you can. Size the market opportunity. Develop the go-to-market strategy. And if you step through those phases, you're going to find that you've got ideas, and you might find you have a whole new business that you're excited about, that you could fund, and you could move into a market while maybe the location-based entertainment industry, kind of works its way through its challenges. There's a couple of more examples I want to give you that have done this, which I've been blown away. One is a company here in Australia called Stage Kings. They were building pop-up stages for giant events like for Miley Cyrus's global tour. And what they decided to do, and the event business obviously went to zero. And so what they did is they looked at the fact that they had CNC tools and people who knew how to use them. And all these people were in isolation and didn't have desks and furniture. So they built isolation furniture, and they spun up a store, and they sell them like knockdown furniture like IKEA. You assemble them yourself. And they saved their company, and they saved all the jobs within the company. And they took what they knew about scaffolding and how it went together and applied it to do-it-yourself desks. And it's brilliant, and they're doing really well. This one I had to share with you. The Lucky Devil Lounge, which is an adult entertainment club in Portland, Oregon, got shut down. They had 80 employees who were all looking at going out of work, and they had a crazy idea from a friend to do food delivery. And so they called it Boober Eats. They saved 25 out of the 80 employees, including plus the bouncers who are acting as drivers. And I have no idea how well they're doing, but I do know that according to early reports, they're charging $30 per delivery, and they're actually making really good money. Another company in the entertainment industry, Evo, which has giant movie theater and bowling-centric FECs in Texas, started doing drive-ins in their parking lot. They had food delivery to the car. Every showing sold out. And they got Neil Patrick Harris to actually host the event and curate the movies. And they're bringing in stars to do autographs and photos during the movie events. And this has been a way for not only to them stay connected with their customers, but keep their employees going and generate revenue. I heard they did $28,000 in revenue in one day. And every show is sold out. And the last one I want to tell you about is there was a mobile escape room out of Canada. And what they did is they had these basically trailers with escape rooms. They would take them to places, and because of the lockdowns, they couldn't do it anymore. And they said, what do we like to do? Well, we like to create puzzles, and we have a pretty good customer base. So let's create escape room games that people can subscribe to, and they play them at home. And they basically created paper-based escape rooms. At first count, they sold 3,000 subscriptions, and I think they sell for about $15 a piece. And every month it's $15 a month, and every month you get a new game. So there's another example of a company who's kind of pivoting and innovating within the space, within their core competency, and saving their business and buying time, really, is what this is about. So I hope some of this was helpful. I think that, innovation is critical. It's also really hard. There are tools. Kylie and I wrote a white paper a couple of years ago on innovating for millennials in location-based entertainment. You can download that at bobcooney.com/innovate. My last 3 blogs have been about this as well. We're going to continue to write and publish about innovation within our space. So check that out. If you have questions, if you need help, drop me an email at what's my email? vrbob@bobcooney.com.